Business Means Yuka Royer in the studio. Great to see you.
Hey, Mark.
Tension mounts between the German government and the Italian bank UniCredit. Yuka Royer, tell us more.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz warned against a hostile takeover after UniCredit surprised the German government by revealing it had significantly raised its stake in Commerzbank, Germany's second largest bank. The Italian bank has now effectively overtaken Berlin to become Commerzbank's largest shareholder after it disclosed that it had increased its stake from about 9% to 21%. The announcement came after the German government announced on Friday it would not sell any more stake in Commerzbank to safeguard its independence. UniCredit boosted its stake using financial tools like derivatives and in such a way that it would not take legal ownership until it gets approval from the European Central Bank. It also asked for the ECB's permission to raise the stake further to 29.9%, just below the threshold set under German law to trigger a mandatory takeover. Here's Chancellor Scholz reacting to the latest move.
Unfriendly attacks and hostile takeovers are not a good thing for banks. And that's why the German government has taken a clear stance on this and made it very clear that we do not consider this to be an appropriate course of action. In Europe and in Germany, it's not appropriate to use unfriendly methods to aggressively acquire stakes in companies without any cooperation, without any consultation, and without any feedback.
Well, Commerzbank's shares initially rose this Monday after UniCredit's disclosure, but then sank as investors became worried about what the ECB might do after the warning from the German Chancellor. It ended down more than 5%, while UniCredit lost more than 3%. Wall Street is hovering around its record highs right now, even as a new report showed US business activity not growing as fast as expected in September, with the manufacturing sector continuing to see a downturn, Mark.
The New York Climate Week is being held alongside the UN General Assembly. What's the key theme this year? That's the question for you, Yuka.
Well, this year's theme simply is It's Time. As people around the world are increasingly seeing the effects of climate change, it's more urgent than ever to take action. Over the weekend, many young people protested in New York as world leaders at the UN hashed out a new pact for the future with new pledges to protect communities from the consequences of climate change.
I'm 17. In a year, I'm going to turn 18. I can't really think about my adulthood without factoring in what the world is going to look like and how destroyed our planet is going to be.
There's nothing bigger than this. Like, what else are you going to fight for?
What we need is not more summits, but is people actually ending fossil fuels, canceling projects that they're building, denying funding to fossil fuel projects.
Motivated young people and a call for action. It's great to hear, isn't it? The economic impact of climate change is huge. Many people, including in developed countries, are facing increased insurance and healthcare costs.
Well, a recent study by the Potsdam Institute estimated it would cost us $38 trillion per year by mid-century. That's more than a third of last year's global GDP. The Z Zurich Foundation is among those calling for urgent action to boost measures, not just to mitigate the impact of climate change, but to help communities adapt to disasters. Earlier, I spoke with the group's head, Gregory Renand, who's attending the Climate Week in New York.
What we're really, advocating for is we really must work on both the mitigation and the adaptation agenda. We cannot do one without the other, right? Up until recently, the majority of focus has been on the mitigation agenda, leaving adaptation finance really as a poor child. Today, 3.3 billion people live in a hotspot of high vulnerability to climate change. This is where we need adaptation finance and also adaptation efforts like the ones the Z Zurich Foundation is doing with its partners as part of the Zurich Climate Resilience Alliance to help community to cope with the consequences of an already worsened climate. Climate change is affecting everybody. It's for a long time is no longer a problem of the global south. When you look at the materialization of climate change, the increase of extreme weather events, both in terms of frequency and severity of impact, is everywhere around the world. Whether you look at it from a developed or developing economies or assessments, is that climate vulnerability piles up to other vulnerabilities as well. So if you look at, for example, urban areas in many developed economies, you have, very poor communities and slums, in those urban areas. And usually those people who have the least access to infrastructure, to income, to services, will be the most affected by the impact of climate change. So recognizing the notion of that, we really try to help communities with a fundamental belief that they cannot be climate resilient without social equity.
Next, the COVID-19 pandemic fundamentally changed the way many of us work. Remote working became, for some, the norm, but employers have been slowly scaling back on that. Tell us why.
Well, Amazon, as you know, Mark, recently joined the likes of Microsoft and Google in ordering its employees to come back to the office full time. More and more employers are trying to limit remote working, but the flexibility that was built into working life through the pandemic is hard to take away from employees now. Here in France, it's even a precondition set by potential new hires. Eliza Herbert takes a deeper look at the situation.
Jean-Philippe has not set foot in his company for 2 months, at least not physically.
I have a virtual office here.
The 30 employees at his workplace work from home 100% of the time. They have even implemented an application for virtual interaction.
For example, if I want to talk to my colleague, all I have to do is move my avatar over to Ben's desk.
Which he admits can't replace all benefits of time spent face-to-face, and his routine is not the status quo in France. In 2023, 1 in 5 employees worked from home, but only 24% did so 3 or more days per week, and most employees only work remotely once or twice a week. For some employers, they hope to see it disappear altogether. Last week, global tech company Amazon ordered staff back to the office full-time. And other leaders, such as the head of French cosmetic company L'Oréal, are vehemently against 100% remote working, views that are not shared by most workers.
They don't like the arbitrary constraints. It's becoming less and less acceptable to ask an employee to come in when they're going to spend the day video conferencing.
It is even the main requirement of some candidates for recruitment.
They ask questions like, what is your remote working policy? I think it's hard for companies to be competitive if they don't offer the flexibility.
Conditions that aren't inclusive of the whole workforce, given many cannot work from home at all due to the nature of their jobs.
So a bit of a headache there for many employers, but I loved that video game-like virtual office that...
Imagine if we used that. Great stuff. Yuka Royer, with all the business use there, thank you very much indeed. Telly provide the call here, don't they, working from home? I never got to do it during the pandemic, did you?
I did.
Yeah.
I
had to come in and present the news because I can't present news unless I'm in a studio. So they couldn't let me do it from home, which was a shame.
I mean, we're doing remote interviews still, which is a great way of connecting with people. So.
Completely. I think it can all work. Anyway, Yuka with the business. Thank you very much.